3 years? 4? 5? Tell me, when is the honeymoon over?
You are Locked On Trojans, your daily podcast on the USC Trojans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Fight on, everyone. I am your host, Mark Hulkin, and thank you for making Locked On USC. It's part of the Locked On Network, your first listen every day. Whether you're watching the show on YouTube, pick your platform, download this podcast. It's always going to be free, and you know how much I always appreciate your support. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers, you can bet $5 and you can get $300 in bonus bets if your first win. You bet your first win and it wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Coach Riley's staff for 2025, I think it's complete, right? At least I think so. I mean, anything's possible. The coaching carousel season is still in full effect. With that being said, and assuming no one else is leaving, how many more years are you willing to allow for Coach Riley to right the ship, to get USC to the playoffs? I mean, isn't that the low bar now? Make the playoffs. The high bar, win the championship. Look, I get it. I know recruiting has been an uphill battle. And the same can be said about, the transfer portal to a lesser extent, I think. But we're now heading into year number 4. Before the transfer portal, before NIL was above the table, 3 years was considered the turnaround time frame. You had 3 years to show marked improvement. Otherwise, it's time to put you on the hot seat. And I think there's enough examples of programs that have turned their stuff around in short order when the roster gets turned over. We could talk about Indiana. We could talk about Arizona State. Those 2 programs come to mind. And not because they made the playoffs, but because they were able to win games pretty much right away. And look, I get it. Trust me, I know all schedules aren't created equal. There aren't any perfect apples to apples comparisons to use. Everything that we talk about and use as evidence, it's all anecdotal, circumstantial. Nevertheless, you have to draw a line in the sand somewhere. 11-3 in Lincoln Riley's first year, it set the table. Right? We knew where the bar was. We knew where USC could be. That's why Coach Riley said he wasn't going to put any limitations on his team. You kind of just let it play out, let it grow organically. So 11-3 in year 1, Heisman Trophy winner, obviously, Caleb Williams. But I'm sorry, 8-5, 7-6, that's not how you follow up 11-3. And when you got that USC logo on the field, on your helmet, on your office door, that's just not acceptable levels for the logo. It's just not. When Lincoln Riley took over, after year 1, year 2, the defense was and I'm using finger quotes, the blame du jour, the blame of the day, the defense. Alex Grinch, when he was coordinating USC's defense. And then last year, that leash got extended because, and I'm using the fans' quotes here, Lincoln Riley did not have his type of quarterback to run the offense. So the defense got better. He brought in Antonlynn, new scheme, pretty much the same roster personnel. He added some players here and there. But again, now all of a sudden, the defense wasn't the problem. It was, we didn't have the right quarterback for Lincoln Riley to run his type of offense. I respect the fans who only want to see the positive. But I also need those same fans to live in the reality. Be a little bit more pragmatic. Coach Riley brought in Caleb Williams with him in 2022. If you didn't have Caleb Williams, you more than likely would have had Jackson Dart. Okay? So let's not complain that the USC didn't have a quarterback. And it's not like they wouldn't have had both quarterbacks for the same amount of time. In 2023, so you had Caleb Williams in 2022, transferred over with Lincoln Riley. Your only other quarterback you brought in that year was a JC transfer, Jake Jensen. He's now a Montana Grizzly. In 2023, Lincoln Riley's quarterback, Malachi Nelson, well, he's now on his third team. He's now a University of Texas El Paso minor. And let's not forget, last year, 2024, Coach Riley had to fight off Georgia to get Jaden Mayaba's transfer. So no high school quarterback. We know we got one in 2025. Who's on Longstreet? That's your first high school quarterback going into year 4? I get it. Trust me. Malachi Nelson, he kind of threw a wrench into the whole thing. Adapt. Lincoln Riley's a quarterback whisperer. Quarterback should be lining up, right? The defense is fixed, or it's nearly fixed. Last year, look, the defense improved by over a touchdown. The scoring defense was that much better. And when you just watched them in general on the field, they looked competent. Antonlynn was exactly what the doctor ordered for Coach Riley. And now you have Rob Ryan as part of the best defensive staff in the country. That's my opinion. Listen, I'm not interested in the excuses or the why it's taking longer than it should. I've asked that question in the past. I've gotten some feedback. Now I'm responding to some of that. I'm not interested in the excuses anymore. This is Coach Riley's roster. It's his coaching staff. He's had 3 years to turn it over and make it his own. We're now going to year 4. If there are quarterback concerns, that's on him, right? Coach Riley, again, he's the quarterback whisperer. There should be a line a mile long. I don't care if you're a high school recruit or a transfer. Your name should be in that line saying, if I want to get developed for the NFL, maybe Coach Riley's the guy to do it. And the offensive line, it's young. It's also talented. And it has the necessary size to compete. You saw that last year. Coach Riley has the skill players that he needs to be successful in offense. The transfer portal has been his crutch with the running backs. He's been really good finding a running back every single year out of the transfer portal. The defensive line, it's deeper than it's ever been. So what happens if Coach Riley decides to go with who's on Longstreet to start the season? Does that hit the reset button again? Or does it not matter anymore? I saw one fan say that Coach Riley deserves at least 5 years. My initial reaction is no. Wrong. Hell no. USC is not, it's not a place like Fresno State or UNLV or a stepping stone program like Oregon. 5 years, I think, is a little bit too long. I think this is the year. 4 has got to be the tipping point. You have to know you're going forward. You have to see improvement. I know some of you are taking this as, I hate Coach Riley. It's another one of those, Mark can't stand Coach Riley diatribes. Wrong. This isn't personal. And for the 114th time, I'm a huge fan of Lincoln Riley's. Love the guy. Like his personality. But I'm also a pragmatist. I live in the reality, and no one should be turning a blind eye, to the facts and trying to make more excuses. You just can't do it anymore. Because look, the other side of the coin to USC doesn't have the bodies to compete, that whole argument. Well, here's the other side of the coin. If Coach Riley and his staff are all that in a bag of chips, then coaching should make up for the quote lack of talent. I mean, if that's the case, coaching should be able to make up the difference. Let's not pretend that USC is playing with just a bunch of, walk-ons and 2-stars and guys that nobody wanted. It's not the case. Again, big fan of Coach Riley, but the honeymoon's over. You don't get 4 years. You don't get 5 years. This is his make or break year. And I understand he's under contract for another 6-7 years. But you have to see the team take that next step. I don't think you would disagree with that. There's nothing wrong with that criticism that year 4, you've got to be able to get over the hump. You can't have an excuse lined up every time something goes wrong. By the way, before we close out this segment, USC's 2025 recruiting class added another wide receiver. Preferred walk-on. His name's Cam Sermons. He's the older brother of R.J. Sermons, number 1 cornerback who's coming in with the 2026 class. But he's not just a throw-in. Don't look at him that way. He's fast. He's shifty. He's like 5'10", 170 pounds. Don't be shocked if he ends up on scholarship somewhere down the road. It's pretty good. And one last note, cornerback, Carlos Nicholson. He told you the other day that he had jumped into the transfer portal. There was some technical stuff they were trying to work out. Well, he pulled his name out of the portal. I don't know what that means. Hopefully they're getting some of the stuff behind the scenes worked out, because I don't think he wanted to leave USC, and I don't think USC wanted to get rid of him. So whether this is NIL related, eligibility issues, I have no idea. What I do know is Carlos Nicholson pulled his name out of the transfer portal. So we'll keep an eye on that. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, today, new customers, you can bet $5 and you can get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep that action going. The FanDuel app, super easy to use. You're not going to need an IT specialist on call for you. There's multiple ways to win when you bet on FanDuel. The game, you can do some prop bets, bunch of ways. Go check it out. Plus, when you do win, you get paid instantly. Like no waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com, join today, and you're going to get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. How much will USC's new linebacker coach, Rob Ryan, have to adjust his coaching style? I mean, he's 62 years old, and he's been hanging out in the NFL. It's been 25 years since he's coached in college. The last coaching job he had in college was with Oklahoma State back in 1999. Now, just because he's 62 doesn't mean he doesn't know how to relate to younger players. When you coach in the NFL, you're coaching younger players. They're not in college, so you can treat them a little bit differently. You don't have to be as concerned about feelings so much. And we know that today's generation can let their feelings get in the way when they don't hear or see what they want to hear. I'm going to talk about feelings more in the third segment. I took some time and I went back and I watched some of Coach Rob Ryan's videos. I wanted to kind of get a feel of his personality. I was watching him explain the 46 defense. Dude's a great communicator. He makes it look so easy. I mean, even the untrained eyes can understand the nuance of the 46 scheme. It's not that difficult. But the way he describes it, the way he explains it, you're like, oh, I get it. I get it. And something else I noticed when I was going through all the different videos, watching him, he likes the microphone. He has a really fun personality. I think Trojan fans are going to love this guy almost as much as I think the players are going to love the guy. Last year, he was mic'd up. He was working, part of the Raiders staff during training camp on the Paramount Plus network. They were doing one of those Hard Knocks types of series. Anyways, Coach Rob Ryan, dude's a character. He's also fat. Yeah, he looks like he's like 5 weeks overdue, getting ready to deliver twins. I love his personality, though. I love his coaching style. So he looks the role. 62. He's got that savage hair that just flows everywhere. Big old beer belly. He looks like a football coach. He's known for his big personality, demonstrative style. Also, his ability to connect with players. Again, I did some research, and the Raiders' offensive line coach, his name is James Craig. He said this about Ryan. He has a personality that is unforgettable, and also believes his personality and experience around the league helps him communicate well with the players. Quote, character, that's number one. He brings a different light to football, which is great for young men. He makes it fun. His presentations, he's the best presentation guy I've ever been around. When he gives a presentation, I'm into it. He does a great job explaining things, close quote. So that backs up exactly my first impression. Like I said, I was watching him talk about the defense that his father, invented, created, developed. We're like, all right, man. I understand what Coach Craig was talking about, how, he gets your attention. He draws you in. Something else that I noticed, my personality profile, so to speak, of Coach Rob Ryan. He's obviously old school. He's got some sarcasm. I love sarcasm. He has that, I've seen it, done it before, attitude. He loves to curse. He uses the F word the way it was meant to be used. Big fan of that. Something else I really liked. He was describing the Baltimore Ravens linebacker, Patrick Queen. And he said he plays the game with violence. And immediately after he goes, and he's such a beautiful person too. Talk about that Machiavellian, that dichotomy of violence. Beautiful. Like, okay. Loved it. The other thing about Coach Ryan is USC's players, no one's going to be able to bring a situation to him and say, hey, Coach, I'm dealing with this. And Coach Ryan's seen it all. He's dealt with it before. This isn't his first rodeo, so to speak. When he was the inside linebackers coach for the Ravens back in 2021, the Ravens have the top run defense in the league. Okay, that's a positive, right? You're adding him to a defensive staff that, Antonlynn, the scheme he brought last year. If we're talking about run defense, USC's run defense in 2024 was pretty good, especially in the red zone, those short yardage situations. They weren't great, but they were a lot better than they were the year before that. And again, in those close confines, when they got into a phone booth, they held their own. I anticipate more nasty from the linebackers with Coach Rob Ryan in charge of the room now. Something else about Coach Rob, you know me, I like to dive in and find out who they are as a person. That's why when I interview the players, if you've ever seen me interview any of the players on this show, I try and get to know them, behind the scenes, not just what they offer on the football field. Who are they? What are they all about? Well, I love this about Coach Rob and his wife. Her name's Ashley. They are big give back to the community type people. They started a charity, a foundation, and this goes just more than football. They have sports people involved across the board. It's called Athletes Against Child Trafficking. Go check it out. Good stuff. So you're bringing in a football coach who knows defense, who's got a personality that I think is going to relate really well to the college players. I think any type of adjustment that he has to make coming back from the professional ranks to college, and right now that line is pretty blurred. You know how I feel about NCAA and the transfer portal and players becoming free agents every single year. Maybe there's not that big of a difference anymore between college and NFL. That's another reason why I think Coach Ryan might be the perfect guy for this job. All right, so a little bit more. Just wanted to kind of peel back the onion, peel back the layers a little bit more, tell you a little bit who Coach Ryan is, what he's bringing to the table. And based on what I've seen, heard, found out, I don't think it's going to be a big adjustment for him. In fact, I think it's just a plus, win-win. I think he's looking forward to coming back to college. He's going to love it. And I hope they mic him up. I want to hear some of that stuff. All right, one more segment to go. This message is brought to you by PrizePicks, the place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings, PrizePicks has changed the game in daily fantasy sports. Whether it's the playoffs or regular season, PrizePicks has made it easier than ever to win big while enjoying all the football action. Now it's the playoff time, and there is no better way to get in on the action than with PrizePicks. Here's how it works. Really easy. Simple. You simply pick more or less on at least two different players. And if your picks hit, you could win up to 1,000 times your cash. Yes, 1,000 times your money just by making a few simple picks. All you got to do is pick a quarterback. Will that quarterback throw more than 2 touchdowns or less than 2 touchdowns? Will that running back run for more than 100 yards, less than 100 yards? It's that easy. You pick more or less. And with that, you're going to get your winnings really fast, sometimes in as little as 15 minutes. Ready to run your game this football season? Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE to get $50 off instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 just for playing. Don't wait. Take your game to the next level with PrizePicks. PrizePicks, run your game. So I want to talk about people's feelings. Getting upset about nothing. And if you check out, by the way, as I'm recording this episode of Locked on USC, Ohio State is taking Notre Dame behind the woodshed. Last time I checked the score, third quarter, Ohio State 31, Notre Dame 7. Congratulations, Buckeyes, you won another national championship. And USC fans, you can take one of those. At least Notre Dame didn't get one. That's the perfect exhale for the 2024 season, which is the perfect segue to why are people releasing their way too early top 25 polls before the last game of the 2024 season was even played? And here's another question. Why are people getting upset about it? So I saw 2 polls. I saw On 3, which might be the worst one. And then I saw Brett McMurphy said, you know what, I got to get into the action. Let me release my top 25 poll too before the last game of the season's played. When you saw these polls, did you get mad or did you just roll your eyes like I did? I mean, let me just race through the On 3's way too early top 25 polls. Texas is number 1, Ohio State's number 2, Oregon's number 3, Penn State 4, Notre Dame 5, Georgia, Illinois at 7, South Carolina 8, Florida at 9, Clemson 10, Auburn at 11, Michigan 12, Tennessee 13, Alabama 14, LSU 15, BYU, ASU, Oklahoma, ATM, Texas A&M at number 19, Kansas State 20, Miami 21, SMU 22, Indiana 23, Georgia Tech 24, Nebraska number 25. So again, the question. First of all, why are you mad? Second of all, the first thing you should be looking at when you're looking at that poll is like Auburn, number 11. you should be probably laughing your butt off. And then you say, Oklahoma? That team that finished 6 and 7? The question you should be asking, you should be making fun of these polls, is did someone with dementia put the poll together? Because I don't understand any of this. It's like, oh, well, those teams made the playoffs, so yeah, they obviously should be there. How does On3 have Miami at 21? But then you take a look at Brett McMurphy's way too early poll. I mean, this is crazy. Let me race through these. Ohio State, number 1. Okay, fair enough. Remember, he did this before Ohio State's about to win the national championship. But do they have their quarterback situation figured out next year? How many of those defensive players are returning? Texas, number 2. I guess the Archie Manning era has begun. He is obviously the preseason Heisman favorite. Brett McMurphy has Penn State at number 3. I don't know, maybe Kyron Hudson and Drew Allar will be able to connect in a playoff game. But the Mackey Award winner is gone. I'm okay with Penn State being considered a top 10 team. They return a lot of players from a roster that did make the playoffs in 2024. But Georgia? I suppose Kirby Smart's going to get that offense figured out. They're going to have a talented roster. All right. But LSU at number 5? Look, USC was better than LSU last year. And I'm not convinced that LSU is better in 2025. Brett McMurphy has Oregon at number 6. Apparently, the Dante Moore era is about to begin. Dan Lanning's still in charge, so what could go wrong? Notre Dame will be number 7. Okay, why not? Clemson at number 8. Look, they did end the 2024 season on an uptick. Then they got embarrassed in the postseason. Tennessee number 9. I guess it's now or never for the Nico Iamaleava era, right? Now or never. Tell me, Brett McMurphy, why do you have Miami at number 10? Why is Mario Cristobal's team in the top 10? Someone explain this one to me, por favor. The back end of it, Arizona State at 11, Illinois 12, South Carolina 13, BYU, Florida at 15, SMU 16, Michigan 17, Kansas State at 18, Missouri, Louisville checks in at number 20, Ole Miss at 21, Lane Kiffin without Jackson Dart, Iowa State at 22, Alabama checks in at number 23, Kansas, and then Navy rounds out the top 25. Again, I'm not mad. In fact, I could probably not care any less. First of all, I think USC will probably make the first poll that actually matters, the real first preseason poll. Can we figure out who's on everybody's roster before we do these types of polls? And if we want to talk about polls, let's say USC checks in somewhere between 25 and 20 before the season starts. Where would you rank USC when they're 2-0 heading into West Lafayette? I mean, does anybody believe that Missouri State or Georgia Southern is going to leave the Coliseum with a win? Of course not. And if USC is in one of those others receiving votes before the season starts, let's say they win both games impressively. 45-10 and 50-6. Is that enough to say, all right, let's put USC up there in the top 20 somewhere? Who cares? The only poll that matters is the playoff poll. In fact, I would prefer, let's forget these way too early polls. And it's a talking point. It gives us something to talk about. But let's just be realistic about it. Let's not get upset about them. Let's not point fingers and say, oh, USC should be in there because they beat this team and they beat that team. Until these pollsters tell you why they're doing it, who cares? What you should care about is coming back for another episode of Locked On USC. Tomorrow, I'll be back, have some more information, talk recruiting, see what's going on there. Talk a little bit about the championship game that Notre Dame lost, assuming they didn't make a huge comeback in the fourth quarter. All right. Till that next episode, everyone, you know what to do.